Welcome to today's show where we're going to talk about something that every leader will face at some point, leading through crisis, whether it is in your workplace, your community, or even at home. Moments of uncertainty and chaos can either make or break a team. As leaders, it is our job to be that steady hand when things get shaky. But here's the real challenge. How do we stay grounded ourselves while guiding others? Today, we're going to explore how the right mindset, consistency, and attention to mental health can equip us to build resilient teams that thrive under pressure. I am excited, along with Coach, to get into this discussion because we believe that leading through crisis isn't just about what you do in the moment. It's also about you it's also about what you've been doing all along to prepare for these moments. We're going to talk about some of these lessons we've learned, some of the mistakes we've made, and how we can give others the tools or some tools that may lead to confidence no matter what is thrown your way. With that being said, Coach, I am excited to get into this conversation today. I think it's going to be a really good one because all of us at some point get into have some sort of crisis. So, but before we even get to the first question, let's talk about what crisis is or what a crisis may look like in someone's life. So, to you, Coach, for the next couple of minutes or so, enlighten us with what do you think or what do you believe a crisis is?
So I'm so glad you started off with this question about what is a crisis, because I think sometimes, a lot of times, people go through things and it may be problematic, but it does not necessarily classify as a crisis. Now, I understand that somebody is saying, well, it might be a crisis to me, even though it's not a crisis to you. And I do believe to a small degree that is an accurate statement. However, a crisis to me is something that creates turmoil, that creates such a degree of confusion within the space that literally has the opportunity to derail plans, to cause grave damage, or to literally set you back to such a degree that you need massive amounts of help. When we look at like events such as disasters, those are considered crises because at the end of the day, when they happen, they cost like millions of dollars to repair. It literally dislocates families from their homes. And in essence, it changes your life for a short period of time. And nine times out of 10, it's something that you will not forget for a very long time or just won't forget at all. So again, looking at what a crisis is, it's not just a problem. It is a problem that has the possibility to have grave damage, to literally excuse me, to literally distort what the foreseeable future can actually be based upon your current plan or based upon the plan that you previously had.
So, just because my dog is sick and thrown up on the carpet, that's not necessarily a crisis.
Not a crisis.
Not a crisis.
Not a
Okay.
crisis.
Okay. Well, some would say that's a crisis
Some
because
would.
now I'm gonna be late for work because I gotta clean up the throw up and I gotta take the dog to the vet, and now I'm gonna miss a whole day of work, and I'm not gonna get paid, and that I just used up my last day of PTO.
All of that could be true. Still not a
Crisis,
crisis. Still not
not
a
a
crisis.
crisis yet. Let me see
No.
if I can add more to it. I'm just playing. We'll leave it right there. Like you said, some may say that it was a crisis, and some may not. Um, I think we may end up going back to because this topic is about leading, right? Leading through crisis, being a leader through a crisis. And I'm just going to be transparent. Most of my leadership was in the military. Um, that type of leadership. I'm married now, and I'm a father now. So there's a different type of leadership here in the relationship and just being a father in general. But at work per se, I'm not a leader per se, but I think that some may still recognize me or think of me as a leader. Maybe I may present certain leadership qualities that they recognize or something like that. So I just wanted to say that there's a bunch of different types of leaders, a bunch of different types of things that people can lead, social life, physical fitness life. There's a bunch of different ways we can lead. But I wanted to start off with the first question, and it talks about, or the question is, how does a leader's mindset influence the way a team navigates crisis?
Yeah. So I want to start off where you were, right? You mentioned being in leadership positions and then being a leader, and that's what I extracted from what you said intentionally, by the way, because I believe that being just because I'm in a position of leadership, that does not necessarily make me a leader, right? I am in a position of leadership, but then there should be some leadership qualities that I develop that should develop over the course of time. And so there's an old saying that I'm sure you remember: speed of the leader, speed of the team. And I think that carries a large weight when it comes down to this particular situation. Because one thing I know for certain, that in the midst of a crisis, if the leader is in a frantic panic, then so will the team be in a frantic panic. So I think when it comes down to the mindset, whether we're talking the leader or whether we're talking the team, the mindset carries a large, it weighs heavily in how the team is able to navigate the crisis. Part of that is, number one, understanding how to navigate said crisis. Like, when we were in the military, we planned for crisis. So when crisis happened, it didn't necessarily seem like a crisis. And I think that's one of the things that, and I'm sure we're going to get into that going forward, right? But in the midst of it, your mindset, being able to deal with the thing, being able to manage a situation and regulate your emotions within the same sense, is the ways that a leader can influence a team when it comes down to navigating the crisis. But again, if the leader just go in a panic uproar, then the team is going to feel uneasy.
Yeah, I get that, especially, if you have a shaky leader, regardless of where you at or which space you may find yourself, I think no one really wants to see or have a shaky leader. I think sometimes on jobs, people will say, "Oh man, my boss is too strict. He don't let us do nothing." But if you look at the production, a lot of times of when the boss may not be as strict, production may not be up, and that may be not something you care about as an employee, but it's definitely something that's important to the bottom line of the company. I think mindset is very key. If you look inside of the home, if you look at a traditional marriage where the man is the head of the household, and he's considered the leader in the home, that if something happens inside of the house, if someone breaks in the house, like, I'm pretty sure if he's running around running for cover or trying to duck and go hide up under the bed, and he like, yeah, babe, go out there, go get him. Like, we would look at that, we would probably look at this guy as not really being a leader. We would probably expect for, in this situation, this traditional marriage, that he get up, he go grab his pea shooter or his bat or whatever he may decide to use for his protection or protection of his home, and go out there and do something about it. So I think mindset is very important when it comes to influence and the way the entire team navigates. We look at, when we were in the military, sometimes when we were younger, we didn't always like those very strong, stern leaders, the ones that was very good leaders. But then as we got older and we started learning different things from them, and at some point, just being transparent, I wanted to emulate, or I picked up some of those leadership qualities that they had, because some of the things that they had were very effective. And I think that just as a leader in general, a lot of times we learn leadership from a bunch of different perspective and a bunch of different leadership styles from a bunch of different people. What you think?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And, just given that's one of the reasons why I started off in the beginning, kind of mimicking what you said. Like, you can be in a leadership position, but that does not necessarily define you as a leader. Like, what is the thing that makes you a leader? What are the qualities that you possess? Like, how are you leading this team? I'm not talking positionally, right? Because it's one thing to be able to have a position, have the title, walk around looking at everybody saying, hey, how you doing, drinking your coffee and all that great stuff. But what happens when it comes down to crisis? Like, have you extended influence to them? Like, do they believe in what you're doing? Do they believe in who you are? And will they follow you, down the hall? Let alone when a crisis hit, will you be able to corral them together, give them blocks of instruction so that they can actually stay calm and stay cool and actually execute what you asked them to do in the midst of said crisis? Like, you can relate, going back to our deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever you've been. It was something unique. It's one thing to train in home station, but it's another thing to deploy to another country and realize they had the same objective as you did. So it's like, my goal is to come home, right? My goal is to make sure every last one of y'all make it back home. So I got it, all the stuff that we was doing all the way up to this point, but this is what we trained for. This is the Super Bowl as far as we're concerned. And I got it as two different things, but I compare it to football because I think it's a very close comparison. Like, you do practice, 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 and practice and practice and practice. And then you crank it up. Like, you turn up the intensity so that you can practice some more. And then you get them to the point, and I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. You get them to the point to where they get mentally exhausted. And so ideally in that mental exhaustion, they're still able to perform, so forth and so on. So that when it's time to do it in real life, it actually just muscle memory start happening and they can perform and stay calm and execute. That's what leaders do. Leaders train their people so that they can perform under pressure.
Man, not only under pressure, but it sounds like you pretty much start segueing into the next question, because as leaders, there's always things that come up. There's going to be some things that we can't predict. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, whether you're in a traditional job where you work in a 9 to 5, like, people are going to call out, people are going to get sick, workers are going to get pregnant, people are going to have death in the family, people are going to have to miss work, people may get hurt at work, people may quit. There are a whole bunch of different things that's going to go on, if in those types of settings. If you own your own business, same thing. If you're self-employed, same thing. You get sick, you get pneumonia, you know what I mean? You break your leg and now you can't go out and survey homes. Like, there are a whole bunch of different things that can happen. And then when you look at it from a team aspect, I kind of want to know, in times of certainty, what are some of the key indicators that a team may be struggling mentally or emotionally, and how should a leader respond?
This is a great question. And there's a couple of ways to look at it. Number one, is it a time of uncertainty for the entire team, or is it a time of uncertainty for an individual? Because you don't handle the entire team the same way you handle one individual. So let's look at the team for an example. If it's a
Okay.
moment of uncertainty for the entire team, 9 times out of 10, they're going to start fighting and bickering one another. That's one of the clear indicators. They're bickering back and forth because they're in that mental space. They're confused. They just don't know what to expect. They're frustrated. They're angry. All those different things. So what the leader has to do at that point, he goes in what we tend to call crisis management, right? And so now it's getting them together, huddling them up, trying to find out where the problem exists and coming up with ways to solve said problem in such a manner to where their delivery, their tonality, their posture is very calming and soothing to the people that they're leading. If it is an individual, the best thing to do is pull that person aside away from the team. You pull that person aside away from the team, take them in the office, have a conversation with them to find out, what's going on, and then you help that person come up with ways to mitigate said issue, like we talked about before. Maybe the dog did get sick. Maybe they took their last PTO the day before and they don't have any PTO. Next thing you know, their child is getting married next week, stuff like that. And so now they're all up in another, all in frenzy in their mind and stuff of that nature. So you sit them down and talk to them and help them come up with ways to solve their own problems. Again, every crisis is not a crisis. Some is just problem sets that need to be that need problem solving, which leads me to the point that everybody do not understand how to go through the stages of problem solving. So when they see a problem, they automatically assume the worst possible outcome, and that become the thing that they stick on. And remember, we talked a few weeks back about emotions. That subjective opinion that they have causes a physiological response inside of them, and then they express it externally. And that's generally what happened. So when we look at it, the team will start arguing. Some may withdraw from the team because they don't know how to process it. They don't know what to talk about. They don't know what to say. And then it just gets to the point to where, like within a team setting, they stop working together. That's another indicator. Like if your team is a team that have been working together, they work well together, whatever the case may be, and it appears that they're no longer working together, something's going on. Like you can walk in the room and you can feel the tension in the air. Something's happening.
Yeah. And you made a whole bunch of great points. And, when I looked at this question, I didn't necessarily look at it from both sides that, the team aspect of it and the individual aspect of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to meet you in the middle, right? And I'm going to go to a relationship and specifically a marriage in I'm going to say it again, a traditional home, right? Just be clear. A traditional home where there's a man and a woman. All right. Um, so in times of uncertainty, what are key indicators that the team is the husband and the wife in my response, may be struggling mentally or emotionally, and how should a leader respond? So I will say some of the key indicators that the team may be struggling is distance, and that is physical and or emotional distance. When the relationship starts becoming distance, when some of the things that you used to do, you don't do anymore. Now, I'm not talking about relationships or marriages that evolve. And then certain things they used to do, like maybe when they were young, they used to go to the club all the time and get drunk. But now they don't do that no more. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, at some point they used to call each other all the time. Not necessarily even that, but they used to spend time together. They did spend intentional time together, going on dates, going out to eat and different things like that. And then now they stopped doing those things. I'm not talking about just because of life, like kids and work, but at the same time, things like kids and work, because in a relationship with the husband and the wife, you still have to be intentional about spending and having that time together. So when someone's pulling back emotionally, that could be a key indicator. And when someone's pulling back physically, y'all used to get busy on a regular basis and now y'all don't. It may be a sign, what I'm saying? For some people, that's a big sign. For some people, it may not be as much. The same thing with emotional. Every time you walk past her, you know what I mean? She used to touch your butt. Now she don't smack you on the butt no more, or vice versa. So just little things like that y'all may not do anymore could be some signs that there is someone struggling mentally or emotionally. So, what do you think about that?
Don't good game me. That's all I'm saying. I don't come from me about some good game. No, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that.
It's our job to good game them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't call it
Um.
good game. We just call them
Yeah.
smack on the butt. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that. I will also say that I don't, and this is just how my mind works. I do love your examples, but this is kind of like what I'm saying about crisis versus non-crisis. Now, I know it
Hmm.
doesn't say crisis on the question; it says
Yeah.
time of uncertainty, right? But then the question I would ask each person, like, why is it uncertain? Why don't you go make it certain? Why don't y'all sit down and have
Hmm.
a conversation, be adults about it, uncover what is uncertain, and now make it certain? Because to
Hmm.
me, when you talk about two people interacting, I think that's an easy fix, right? That's just me though.
Should
That
be.
should be right, but again, like I said, what's a crisis to one person isn't a crisis to the other. So if there's times of uncertainty in a relationship, sit down, have a conversation, ask the question until we get to some type of resolution, with understanding being the goal, not trying to be right or whatever. Like I think all of these things are good, in my opinion. Like I guess I view problem sets in relationship as different. Problem sets in relationships to me are really opportunities. They're opportunities for those two to grow together if that's what they so choose to do. So again, if it's uncertain, okay, go make it certain. Have the question, ask the question, have the conversation, and you guys sit down and dialogue until you come to some type of understanding.
Yeah, I can dig that. Hey, when when you were in, did you ever have one of those leaders that um didn't really care about soldiers like mental or emotional well-being? Like, did you ever have anything like that? And like, if you did, um, I just kind of be interested to kind of know something about it because we both had leaders in the military, and when we were younger, we may thought they were a certain way, but then as we got older, we thought a different way. So how do leaders balance taking care of their own mental well-being while also leading others through stressful and chaotic times? And you remember we was in Iraq, like sometimes when I was in Iraq, I was a leader. I was, at least E5 the first time and E6 the second time. But I'll stop talking and let you answer the question.
No, no, no. You're good. You're good. As I'm looking at this and listening to your description of it, um, I do like the word balance, but I don't think it's a balance, right? I think it's a preparation, if you will. It's not whether or not the individual or whether or not I will run into a situation or whether or not we're going to have chaotic times. It's going to happen. Stress is going to happen. It is inevitable. So a leader must start working on their mental well-being early and often in preparation for when stressful times happen. Not that you're expecting stressful times or not that you're expecting chaotic times, but it's almost like the notion of your cup runneth over, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. Well, you shouldn't pour from a cup at all. It should be the run over that you give away. So you prepare yourself so that when the stressful time happen, when the chaotic times happen, that's like you have enough in you. You have the resiliency to deal with them. You have the resiliency to kind of understand what they're going through. To your question, when you mention, have I ever encountered leaders who didn't care about a soldier's mental well being? I think you're talking about everybody in the army that was in combat arms prior to OIF 1. It was not no it listen,
Yeah.
mental well-being was not a focal point at that particular point in time. It was all about
Mm.
execution. It was all about mission. It was all about work until you get the work done. Like, you would hear units say, well, family first, mission always. Sure. It was more like mission first, mission always, and family to get the leftovers.
Yeah.
That's really what combat arms was like. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every leader was a bad leader. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just believe that at certain points you encountered those leaders who actually understood mental well-being because they may have went through a stint, in their past. They may have had to go through some type of mental health counseling to resonate with some bad experiences that they had, or whatever the case may be. So those leaders, sure, they kind of understood the tenets of emotional intelligence and they used them in their leadership skills. But then for a majority, no. But then after OIF 1, the whole notion of PTSD, like we talked about previously, became a big sticking point. So mental well being became huge, huge. Prior to that, if something was to happen, say, for example, the worst possible case can happen to a soldier, whether it's self inflicted or just, whatever, we would do, what was it, safety stand down day? So that everybody get
Oh
together.
yeah.
Right. You do your safety stand down day, and that was the honor
After
day afterwards. Right.
after something
But
happened. Yeah.
where is the preparation? Now, they learned their lesson. And so now they do a lot of resiliency training, which I think is awesome and phenomenal within itself. And I think that's what leaders must do, regardless of whether you work at Firestone or whether you work for a Fortune 500 company. You must do the level of mental well-being, the care that is needed for you in order to be prepared for when stress and chaotic times happen.
I like all of that. Um I I see and I can understand why you took the word balance out of there because, like you said, these things are inevitable. They're going to happen, and, I think it's very important for leaders to make sure, like you said, that they give from an overflowed cup, that they take care of their own mental health. I think that's first. I think, especially when you're young, you don't necessarily know that. We were just young E5, we just going hard charging E6s a lot of time, we just going hard all the time. Just no off button, because that's what we thought we were supposed to do. And at the time, maybe that is what we were supposed to do. Maybe, I can't say that I didn't learn some valuable lessons being like that. I can't say that some of those things didn't help me prepare for Iraq and being deployed and different things like that, because it's really hard sometimes. I don't want to blast nobody out, but I've been to meetings where there were a room full of counselors, and for upwards of 30 minutes plus, you will hear a lot of talk about, being over overexerted, right? And you would think as a counselor that we have the tools in order to deal with a lot of these stressors that everybody goes through called life. We have the tools. If you're a coach, if you're certified, if you're a counselor, you have all the tools. But it was fascinating to me to see how many people didn't use their own tools that they have. So, I've heard you mention before that, just having the information is not enough. You got to have the application that goes along with it. So, to this question, I think first of all, like you mentioned, leaders have to first take accountability for their own mental health and well-being. You know what I mean? And I think then and only then can you really start to try to help out or deal with things when they come, when things are stressful and chaotic, because if not, you're gonna be like the other question, you'll be running around here with your head like chicken with your head cut off. You know what I mean? And that ain't good for a leader, because people are depending on you. When we take a platoon to Iraq for 15 months and you bring them back safely and everybody has all their fingers and toes, that's a huge accomplishment because there was a whole bunch of stuff that went on in those 15 months. There was a whole bunch of stressful times, a whole bunch of chaotic times, being mortared, being shot, going outside the wire, like all of these different things is going on a regular basis, So you have to, as a leader, take care of your own mental health and your well-being and stuff like that. Especially if you plan on being in charge, because you're going to have a whole bunch of stressful and chaotic times.
Can I add to that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is like a sore spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
What you just said, because you're absolutely right. Acquiring the information about a thing does not make you a subject matter expert on that thing. And if you are not a subject matter expert on that thing, you should not be trying to apply that thing to someone else. You practice only on yourself until you learn the lessons that you need to learn in the midst of doing that thing. I've, I've, I've observed, and I struggle with this. I've observed two things: somebody that gets some information and be like, I'm good. And they go run off to the hills. Like, they got their little piece, their piece of their pie and they want to run up to the top of the hill and eat it. But no, you got your piece of the pie. Now you need to sit down here so we can teach you how to eat the pie. But then you have those who get their piece of the pie, or they get a whole pie and then run around and try to gather people around so that they can share the pie. You're not ready to share the pie yet. You're not equipped to share the pie yet. That's a thing. And that's why I say this isn't a balancing act. This is something that leaders must do and practice on themselves. If they do not do that, then again, leadership is all about influence. So what ends up happening is that you will encounter a situation to where you realize that you're not equipped to handle that situation alone, let alone help anybody else through that situation. So this is why leaders must be prepared. They must do the necessary work to be equipped to lead people. And I'm not saying that leaders need to be mental health counselors, but what I am saying is that leaders need to recognize whenever someone that they're, that they're working with, I say it that way, someone needs a counselor, because too many times leaders take on a mantle that goes well beyond their skill set, and then they give some erroneous advice, and then next thing you know, that person go do it, and then they mess something up. So I just want to kind of put that plug in there.
I appreciate that plug. and I need to know more. I know you talked about someone getting information. Um, how do how does someone know when they've acquired enough information or learned enough lessons to where they're at a point now to where they should start being able to give back? Because honestly, the reason why I asked that is because I've struggled for a long time, um, especially when it came to starting, this podcast, in 3 years, almost 3 years ago in November. And it was like, you're not ready, you can't talk good, you don't have enough information. Who do you think you are? What makes you think that you have learned enough to where someone's going to listen to anything that you have to say?
Yeah,
So I didn't want to blow past that because I think that that's very important, especially since we're talking about leaders. Is that how do you know when you reach that point to where you can start giving back information that you've learned?
great question. And I recall those times because I shared those times with you. Not you feeling uncomfortable, but me feeling uncomfortable.
Mhm.
For those people who knew during that time, like I literally thought about podcasting like almost 2 years before I even did it. And then there was a friend of mine. She kind of pushed me in, like, say you should do it. You got a lot to say. You should do it. I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that, so forth and so on. And then the next time we met, she was like, okay, what can I do to help? I was like, okay, fair enough. That was it. That was it for me. And then I started audio podcasting first before I did the whole video thing. And so my first stint was with her. Like she has a podcast and I was a guest on hers. And she was like, yo, like that was an awesome podcast. Like this is the most views I've ever had on any podcast. And I was like, I didn't, again, trying to maintain humility, right? I didn't want to assume that you had that many views just because of little old me, right? Let's just say the moons and the stars lined up that day. Nobody else had anything else to do. And they say, hey, let me
Mhm.
listen to what they're talking about. Um, I think you prepare, right? You prepare, there's a thing called preparation, and then there's over preparation, right? And when I say over preparation, I mean that you will hit the space of preparing, feeling like I'm not ready to get started yet. However, going back to preparation, preparation is where you do the necessary work on yourself, the necessary studying, the necessary training, the necessary conversations, the necessary dialogues. Just using this as an example, the necessary dialogues, going back and forth, answering questions off the cuff without any notes, whatever the case may be. Like all of those things kind of factor in. And I know somebody in the chat kind of hearing everything I'm saying right now because she gonna get hot on the 21st, right? Or they are going to get hot on the 21st. I'm sorry. So you do enough conversation back and forth, answering questions without notes before you. Like initially you have notes, but then you become so attached to your notes that your notes become a crutch. So then it's like, you know what? Forget these notes. I don't need any notes. Like I did all of my preparation, all the things I want to talk about prior to, and I'm just going to trust the process. And then eventually you just do it, right? And the key is that when you do it knowing that you've prepared adequately, understanding you're not going to feel like you're adequately prepared the first time you did it. That's the key. Because I can't speak for you, but I think what I'm going to say is going to sound very similar to you. You were hypercritical the first time you keyed that button and said go live. You probably was sweating, you was
Mhm.
nervous, you was like, man, you got up and your sweat was running down your back and all that stuff. And like, man, I hope that was okay. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and then somebody said, man, that was great. Like, what? Yeah, it was great. Oh, okay. So I think that's the key. Prepare. You have to prepare. You have to do the necessary work on yourself before you decide you want to influence somebody else. Again, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So when we're talking about podcasting, whatever the case may be, people who have these, in my opinion, they have a social responsibility. What is sickening to me is that I get to hear a lot of people talk about a lot of pointless stuff. Why? Why are we wasting our time talking about pointless stuff? I got a better one. Why are you wasting your time listening to pointless stuff? If you can't extract something from what you're listening to and actually apply it to your life, why are you wasting your time with it? Trash TV is still on. Go look at that. But I think going to the point which you mentioned earlier, people are addicted to drama. So if we're not
Yep.
discussing drama, then a lot of people don't want to get interested. Well, what
Mhm.
happens? The people who talk about drama, they practice drama. So because they've practiced drama so much, they are prepared to talk about drama without flaw or any reservation whatsoever. So it's all in the preparing to such a degree that what you do or is becomes somewhat muscle memory, and that's the key. And you got to get over that hurdle of when is the right time. There is no such thing as the right time. So as much as I love that questions look different for every person because
Mhm.
the most important thing they got to regulate is themselves. I can't allow my emotions to interfere with the thing that I know I'm supposed to do. Therefore, emotions need to take a back seat, and then I need to engage this, prepare this, so that this thing is working, so that this thing can work is the way it's designed to work.
Yep. I like it. I was gonna add something to it, um, but I won't. I'll move on to the next question. So, with that being said, actually, wait, is there a question? To the panel, how does mental well-being affect the foundation of a leader? You want to answer?
Sure.
Then I'll go.
Um, I love this question.
Well,
First of
hold
all,
on, real quick. First of all, thank you, Verlene McCoy, for the question. I appreciate you.
yes, absolutely. I love this question, by the way, because I look at it as a dichotomy, but it's not a dichotomy. It is a spectrum, right? On one end, a person is not mentally well. I'll say it that way, not to the extreme to where they need like some help, if you will, like being locked up on the fifth floor. But they're not mentally well, which means they have a lot of past experiences that they have not resonated with. So therefore, as that leader who have not resonated with those past experiences, 9 times out of 10, what's going to end up happening is that they're going to project those experiences on their employees whenever that employee does anything that remotely reminds them of some of the things they've been through in the past. So if you have an employee, yes, the fifth floor, if you have an employee that talks too much and you don't like people who talk too much, if you have an employee who is needy and you don't like needy people, that becomes problematic for the leader. On the other end, you have the mentally well leader, and that mentally well leader not only have a necessary amount of patience for that employee or for those employees, but they also help those employees through certain times. But by that same token, they're assertive, and if they communicate effectively. But by that same token, at a certain point, they know when to cut it off. They know where to draw the line when it comes down to those employees who are either entitled or have no desire to be a part of the team. They're just there because they're there. They're trying to draw a check and they're recluse to their own selves. So when you look at those two ends of that spectrum, leaders that exist anywhere in between those two will carry on some of those traits. You still have leaders who are patient because they've seen patience when they were growing up. They've exercised patience and all that other great stuff, but they still have some things they haven't dealt with. So now, when employees, the dog got sick, I need to take PTO. I'm texting you at 7:45 in the morning. I'm supposed to be at work at 8 o'clock, and all this other great stuff. The leader flies off the handle. Why? Because you knew what time you're supposed to be here. You knew all these things. Wait, calm down. Develop the situation and get a better understanding before you start reading that person their rights.
Oh, I like that. Miss Verlene McCoy, how does mental well-being affect the foundation of a leader? First of all, great question, and I really like when I can pull an analogy out of a question, right? So the word foundation, I'm going to my analogy for this is the foundation of a house or a structure or a building or anything else that you want to build, right? That is the most important part of the house, of the building, of the structure. If your foundation is trash, your building is going to be trash. It's probably not going to hold up. And this can be a physical building, this can be a relationship building. Yep, just saying. Now, when I'm talking about the foundation, if you look at a foundation of a house, just if you do a slab, there's concrete and then there's some rhubarb or something like that inside of that. And then inside of the rhubarb is made up of a bunch of different types of metals and stuff, and then the concrete is made up of rocks and stones and sand and some sticky stuff that binds it all together. So not just that you have the foundation, but the foundation goes a little bit deeper. So I think when it comes to well-being is just one part of the foundation that is needed to have a solid foundation of a leader. Now, what I'm trying to say, and what I'm trying to say is that I think that it is very, very, very important that this foundation is strong. And if it is not strong, it not only affects the leader, but it also can affect every subordinate that's up underneath the leader. And that's kind of sort of what Coach was saying earlier too. If I'm coming in and I'm crappy all the time, then that energy is probably going to flow downhill. You know what I mean? If my mental health is jacked up, I can't teach my soldiers, I can't teach my subordinates how to work on their mental health, how they can deal with crisis or other things that they're going through. So the mental health, the foundation is so important, and it can affect your whole leadership style and your ability to be able to reach out and help your subordinates or be productive in the job or profession or anything that you're going through, even your relationship.
And to that point, and I know we're getting a little long winded on this question, but to that point, you also got to realize where that foundation came from. Sometimes we,
Yeah.
well, not sometimes,
Or where the directions from the foundation came from.
correct. You should not still be using what I've been through as a child as an excuse when you're in a leadership position. I'm sorry. That goes out the door the minute that you decided to become a leader, whether you are a husband or whether you are a first line supervisor or whatever they've been through. Like those things you've been through, we're sorry they happened and they probably were just egregious. But by that same token, you got to find a way to resonate with those emotions and then get beyond that so that you can be better for the people that you're called to serve. Make no mistake about it. A leader serves the people that they work with. A husband serves his wife. A husband serves his kids. That's why a wife serves the husband. A wife serves the kids, right? The kids, they actually serve the parents and help them do the things they're supposed to do. That's why the mantle of leadership has been so contorted over the years, because it all sounds as though I'm the leader, I'm at the mountaintop, all bow to me. No, that's backwards. Like, no, your job is to find out what they need, resource them so that they can do the things that they need. If I am not well mentally, then I still think it's all about me. If every opportunity I'm trying to be sage on the stage and get my moment, get my 5 minutes of glory, then I need to take a look in the mirror and do some assessments.
Yeah, come on, look in the mirror. That was for Shelly. She appreciate that. Um, let's just do this last question. I think we can jump on it real quick. And then we'll move into some true false or something else. Um, what have been, and I'll even go first on this. What have been the most impactful lessons you've learned through crisis in your own life, and how have those experiences shaped your leadership philosophy? So I would say one of the most impactful lessons I've learned is that um, stay prepared, right? There's always going to be something that happens in your life. So the more prepared you are, I think sometimes it's easier to deal with things when it comes to crisis. Now, how do we prepare for things? Well, by doing hard things, right? So when you do something hard, it prepares you to when hard things come. So if you do something hard, like get up in the morning and run 10 miles and you don't want to do it, that's something hard. But if you continue to do that, when other things come up in your life, they may not be as hard or they may not be as challenging. So my response to this is stay prepared by doing things hard. And how have some of those experiences shaped my leadership philosophy? Is just let me know that at all times I need to try my best to try to stay as prepared as possible for life. I can't control everything, but I can control things um that I can control. And what I mean by that is nothing. I just start blabbering
The great prophet, Honorable Mike Tyson said, everybody got a plan until they get popped in the mouth.
until
Yeah.
exactly.
And I think that's it. I think, we mentioned one of them, deployment to Iraq, Afghanistan, whatever that looks like. Being married and going through a divorce, that's another crisis, if you will. I think the lessons that you learn is that you weren't as prepared as you thought you were. And I think that's always the case, because if you were prepared or as prepared as you thought you were, then it never would have been a crisis in the first place. So the lesson that you learned there is that I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was, but however, I learned some things about myself in the midst of this crisis. I learned that I lack in preparation in this arena. I lacked in preparation in this arena. So now, how does that shape your leadership philosophy? Well, that means that in the area of preparedness, you now add those things to it. The things that you found out, you discovered that you weren't as prepared. That becomes the thing that you kind of teach to some of your subordinates as a leader. That becomes the things that you teach as an adult, as a parent, as a father, as a mother, right? We should be teaching our children from the lessons that we learn, not trying to let them make the same mistakes that we make. So those things help to shape your leadership philosophy. Your philosophy adjusts periodically over time. And I think that's the key. If you still have the same leadership philosophy that you had 20 years ago, then I wonder if you actually learned any lessons.
Yeah, your philosophy should evolve at some point. Um, Thanks. We got another question. If the leader has team members who require extra one-on-one time, counseling, etc., that it takes away from the overall objective of the team, how does the leader switch gears back to the team focus?
By helping that other person recognize that my time is valuable, I don't mind sitting down working with you one on one. However, did you do the necessary work that you need to do first? Sometimes people just want you to hold their hands. I'm just going to tell you the God honest truth. When they can go do a thing themselves, they refuse to do it for one reason or the other. And then they want you to do it for them because they feel if they come to you, you can do it faster. Sure,
Mm.
you can do it faster. The reason why you can do it faster, because you took the time to research it. You took the time to learn it. So sometimes we just got to look again, don't take this the wrong way. And I don't mean no disrespect when I use this phrase. We just got to look a gilt horse in the mouth and say, hey, go sit down and figure it out. Sometimes you have to be that direct with people. Go sit down, figure it out. When I come back, have a solution. And if you put it, because I think we're equipped. I want to make sure we say that. I think we are equipped as people to figure it out. And sometimes when you stop enabling a person from being that, then you put it back on them, then eventually they'll either go figure it out or they'll go to another team member. Any of those solutions is the correct answer. You probably should have went to a team member before you came to me in the first place, right? But then you probably should have tried to figure it out before you went to a team member. So I think that becomes the thing. Focus everybody back on what we're here to do. I'm not here to hold your hand 24/7. If I spend all of my time with you, I can't spend my time doing the things that I'm supposed to do. I mentioned this, man. This is probably about 2 months ago now.
Hmm.
As a leader, you spend 80% of your time with 20% of your population. If this is one of your 20%, hmm, ish, but that's a different conversation. Because if I'm doing one on one time, and I know she said counseling, right? But if I'm doing one on one time, it's more so of how I can elevate them and make them better. Okay. But if this one person is part of the 80% that I don't spend, part of the 80% that I don't spend 80% of my time with, then they need to go figure it out. Go see Adrian. She is part of my 20%. Go see Adrian. Adrian can help you out with that. I got a meeting. I'll be back. And then I will talk with Adrian and see where, I'm saying, where she helped you out and what you were missing on it. So employ some of those leaders that you have on your team as well.
I'm looking at this and I'm seeing for some reason, some self reflection. I'm looking at as a team member, why do I have, you know, a I'm thinking this more than one. I'm thinking this enough to where it's causing an overall shift in the objective of the team. So now I have to say, what's going on? Is something wrong with my leadership style? Not taking away any of that stuff or anything that you said, but it's like, at some point when we look at the data, if I'm having, if I got a platoon of 20 Joes and 10 of them always getting in trouble, is it something about my leadership style just causing this? I'm not saying that it is. I'm not saying that it's not. But what I am saying is that would be the leader that I am now, not the young sergeant, but the leader that I am now, that would cause me to look in the mirror and just to, see if I can recognize anything in there that may be me that may be causing some of this. Not saying that it is, but there was just a different perspective on the question.
I do like that. But I would say that, and just looking at the question for face value, not reading into it, right?
Yeah.
I would say for a leader to take that posture, they would be being hard on themselves. Uh,
Mm,
because again, a team member, if the leader has team members, okay, I missed the S there, team members who require one-on-one, one-to-one counseling time. Okay.
yeah.
So now I see it. Now I can see
Yeah.
it.
Kind of like how many, if it's just one, that's different.
Right.
But if we got 10, it might be me, just like
Yeah.
in education, if you got 20 kids and 19 of them fail the test, maybe you didn't teach it right, it may not be the teacher. It could be the 19, it could be the
Yeah.
10 Joes, but at least it's a cause to at least to self-reflect just to see if there is anything there. Like I said, it may not be.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I'm still looking at the question. Never mind. Let's move on.
okay. True, false, true, false, true, false. What's the first true, false? We do about 4 of these. A leader should always have all the answers in the crisis.
Doggone right. No, I'm joking.
Oh, going right. He better. If not,
Absolutely.
I don't want him leading me.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think everybody already know the answer to this question, but I would give them time to answer it, even though I kind of already gave it away. But I think the key here is that when we look at this word always, that kind of gives it away. Like, it is impossible for you to have every answer there is under the sun. Some answers, a majority of the answers that you're going to need will come from the team. So, what leaders should do is empower their team to actually voice their opinions and things of that nature. So, the answer here, as people have already put in the chat, is false.
There you go. Boom. Next, what we got? Consistency in leadership is more important than flexibility in a crisis.
Do, 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 do,
Or
do.
consistency.
I'm waiting for some
I'm waiting.
answers to populate.
What the
I
cat? Let
need
me
to
look over
see
in
at
the chat.
least two or three before I say anything. I'm looking. Consistency in leadership is more important than flexibility in crisis. Okay, there's one, there's two. I need one more. There's the third one, I think.
Ooh, we got some difference. We got some
We got
truths and some falses.
Yeah, we got some differences of opinion. That's okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So I got three already. So the answer here is false because
False.
yes,
Okay.
the answer is false. I kind of talked about it previously because everybody got a plan until they get hit in the mouth. A crisis is going to hit you in the mouth, right? So whatever your plan is, you're going to have to adjust. In fact, one of the tenets of leadership is mental agility, right? You have to be mentally agile in order to not stay so fixed to your plan that you can't see alternative plans in the way of accomplishing a mission. So false.
But however, comma,
Hmm.
now as you went through it, I think I might see why Adrian said true, right?
Hmm.
So at some point, at sometimes, regardless of what's going on, we got to stick to the plan. We got to remain consistent with whatever we said we was going to do. We said no matter what, we charging the hill. We ain't backing down. We going through the hill. So I can see how she may have um her perspective may have could have been the truth. Okay,
Right.
okay. Get it.
Right. And
Yeah.
again, to that point, sure, the overall end state
Yeah.
would still be the same, but
Yeah.
the way we get there is going to probably change about 4 or 5 times.
Yeah. I don't doubt that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. Next. please. Vulnerability in leadership can build stronger trust within a team.
Great point. Thank you for saying that, Nadella.
Can
So we see
get some
two
truths.
responses, three responses. There we go. So
Mhm.
the answer is true.
Answer is true. All right, one more. Then we're going to slide over and do a couple of scenario questions. True or false? Leaders should prioritize their team's mental health over their own during a crisis. Ooh,
Oh,
this is a good one.
oh, Lisa said true or false on the previous one. I like that.
Ooh,
Lisa,
yeah.
if you don't mind, kind of give us a little feedback. Okay, we got one answer. We got two answers.
I'm interested in hearing your response to
I
this.
know you are.
True or false?
We got a
Yeah.
false. Doggone it, it's true and false.
True and false.
They- now, seriously though, it depends on what stage they're in. So once they become a leader, then sure they should prioritize their subordinates, but they need to also focus on theirs. Again, they need to make theirs a priority. So I wouldn't even say it's not even an or thing, in my opinion. It has to be both. So you prioritize mental health as a leader, period. Not tie the mental health to the person. So if we say prioritize our subordinates over mine, I think it's kind of disingenuous. We prioritize mental health across the board to include leaders and subordinates alike. So if I had to pick one, I'm torn, but I'll be completely transparent. I would have to say false because if I don't prioritize my mental health as a leader, there's no way in the world I can help my subordinates when it comes under their mental health.
Yep, I get all of that. Um, Lisa also, in response to the other question, she says sometimes people can take your vulnerability as a weakness.
Good point.
All right, here we go. Next scenarios. Here we go. Here we go. The first scenario. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Ooh, not that big. There we go. All right. Personal life. You've just experienced a major life setback, whether it's a loss, a job loss, a failed business venture, or a personal disappointment. How do you lead yourself through this uncertainty while maintaining a resilient mindset and keeping your long term goals in focus?
Very good question. So this kind of goes back to what I said previously. Like some things are not necessarily crisis. It's just a facet of living. Life setback happens to everybody. I don't care who you are. If you haven't experienced a life setback yet, just give time. So I think here one of the first things they need to understand is that it's okay, right? They need to regulate their emotions and not allow their emotions to drive the train. They need to go through the steps, the problem solving steps. They need to identify the problem, analyze the problem. Um, yeah, I'm sorry, identify the problem, analyze the problem, come up with possible courses of action, select the course of action, and then implement said course of action. That works for every last one of these. So when you look at job loss, the problem set is I do not have a job, I cannot pay my bills without a job, right? Am I going to go the route of unemployment or am I going to go and hunt for a job right now? Failed business venture, got it. Again, same scenario, right? Personal disappointment, mm, it happens. So I would say that again, regulate yourself. Don't allow your emotions to start making decisions for you. Right. Make sure that you remain logically intact. Analyze go through the steps of problem solving, and then come up with the most appropriate course of action to get you to where you're trying to get to.
Man, I can't deny anything that you said. So with that being said, I'm gonna slide on over to social life. Let's see what we got when it come to our social life. All right, social life. A close friend has been acting distant and unresponsive, and you're unsure why. This uncertainty has started. Oh, I'm sorry. This uncertainty has started affecting your social life, your social circle, and your own mental well being. How do you lead with emotional intelligence and manage this social crisis?
Number one, it's not a social crisis.
That part.
I'm going to start there because if I view it as a social, or if I view it as a crisis, then I will behave like it's a crisis. Again, you know how we say people come into your life for a time in the season. Sometimes we need to recognize that everybody's not going to promise follow us to the promised land. Some people got their own promised land. Be okay with whatever decision that they make. Once you get to the point of being okay with that, then you can move forward with your life. Trust me, that person only made room for some other great people to show up. That's all it is.
Mhm.
So if I stay so focused on the fact like, oh my God, Garfield don't want to talk to me anymore. Boo hoo, right? I get it. I understand. If I didn't do anything, I need to search myself and ask myself, did I do anything intentionally to offend him? Did I do anything to offend him, whether intentional or unintentional? And if I can answer yes to either one of those, reach out, apologize. I believe I offended you, whatever that looks like. And then if he's acceptive, unreceptive, whatever the case may be, I don't go with a makeshift apology. I'm sorry. I'm sorry your feelings was hurt. It's not an apology, bro. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? We gotta kind of mature beyond those grade school apologies. Have an authentic response that actually identifies that you are remorseful for the thing that you did. And again, moving beyond that, if there is nothing that you did, again, focus on moving forward with your life and your plan. Your friend may not have necessarily been a part of that plan. Let's just call a spade a spade. So I think that is the thing. Emotional intelligence should be a thing that I have been working on long before me and Garfield became friends, right? So now that me and Garfield are friends, we behave emotionally intelligent toward each other. So if something happened, we do not hesitate to pick up the phone and say, hey, bro, I think I did. And I did this to you a couple of times. Hey, bro, I think I
Great
did something, man. And I want to apologize to you. Man, you ain't do nothing. So it's okay to err on the side of caution. But if they just leave and you didn't do anything, that's okay. That's their life. They're well equipped to make whatever decision serves them best. You just have to be okay with that.
Man, I like that. I remember when we were doing elevated dialogue, Antoine talked about people on the money and different things like that. He was like, if somebody owe me money and they don't pay me back, he said it just cost me $300 to get rid of them. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I'm seeing right here. You know,
Yeah,
a close friend has been acting distant and unresponsive. If you know you haven't done anything, you're self-aware of your actions and stuff, and they're just being unresponsive. You know, there's nothing wrong with creating boundaries with yourself and realizing that this person may not be in your life for this season. That's
right,
fine. You know, I think it's an issue and something's not there, or you still have some maturing or growing to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you are still, you know what I mean, feeling if it's affecting your well-being, you know what I mean? Because I tell you right now, people in my life that become distant and responsive, I have zero problems with it. That's one less person I need to manage a relationship with. You know what I mean? That's more time that I don't have to somebody calling me, asking me for something. That's more time I don't have to worry about somebody giving me some negative information. So, but I'm there now and I haven't always been there. So,
right.
and that's with a certain level of growth and maturity and emotional intelligence to be able to manage social crisis.
Yeah.
Um,
Here's one thing I will also add: the unresponsive thing. I get that part, but
mhm.
been acting distant, that could be viewed as subjective. So if
Yeah,
you don't
very.
necessarily have any relevant evidence of what acting distant look like, chances are you could have been making that up in your head. Maybe that person
Mhm.
is just busy with a project that they're working on that has nothing to do with you. And so your perspective of not talking to that person every day or talking to that person once a week, or you talk to them every now and then, is being acting different. Well, that might be more of a you thing than it is a them thing. So I think at all possible costs, we need to look at ourselves first, analyze our behaviors, and see where we're injecting things. The unresponsive thing, that's clear and cut. That,
Yep,
that's clear. That's objectivity at its finest, right there.
yep. Great point, great point. Thought I had a 151. Boom, here we go. Fitness and wellness life. You've been training for months for a marathon, but an unexpected injury sets you back. You're devastated and unsure how to proceed. How do you lead yourself through this personal crisis and stay resilient in your fitness journey?
Oh my goodness. I'm laughing and he know why I'm laughing, right? So may not be a crisis, right? And here's why I say that. Maybe it's just something that's happening that's making me aware of myself at this particular point in time. The sky's not falling. Maybe what I planned on doing, and when I planned on doing said marathon, maybe I can do the next one and allow myself to heal properly. So I think in this particular scenario, I just need to resonate that I might not necessarily be ready for this one, but I can do the next one and be okay with that. Like, I think sometimes we're a little hard on ourselves. Sure, this is my plan and I want to stick to it. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about really earlier. This is the mental agility piece. The plan is still to do the marathon. I may not do the one next month, but I do the one in December if there's a marathon in December or in March, whenever the next one is, right? So give myself some time to heal. That's the biggest piece right there because if I push through, I may run risk to injuring myself more, and then I may have to push that time to the right, maybe a year and a half now. I may get like what do you call them, shin splinters or something. Just using this as an
Mhm.
example,
Yes.
shin splinters or something of that nature. Well, that if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, they're like love, they're fractures in your shin, micro
Hairline
fractures.
fractures. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that can take a longer time to heal than let's just say it feels like I'm bruised or something of that nature. So give myself the appropriate amount of time, the appropriate amount of rest, and then work on this and don't be so hard on myself. Assuming that this person is hard on themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. And then, be around, continue to follow, continue to, stay abrupt, but make sure that you're not so engulfed in that environment to where their excitement about what they're doing causes you anxiety. That's another
Yeah.
thing. It's like, say, for example, I was trying out for the high school football team and I got cut from the high school football team, but all of my friends on the high school football team, and then I hang out with them and I'm hearing them talk about practice. I'm hearing them talk about their weightlifting time. I'm hearing them talk about the game and all kind of stuff like that, and I start feeling down because I can't participate in that. So we got to be careful. There has to be a balance to where my mental well-being is just as important as my physical well-being.
Man, I am in week 11 of training for my marathon. If something devastating happen and I can't proceed, I am going to have a personal crisis. I'm just letting everybody know. No, I'm not. But to answer this question, um planning, having a solid plan is one thing that can help. My plan is to do a marathon before I turn 50. I'm 48. I'll be 49 in December. I have this already built in my plan already. I have injury setback. I'm just like, if I don't get through this year, my marathon is November the 16th. If for some reason it doesn't happen and I get set back, then I have, like you just said, I can do it next year. I can get rest, I can get healthy, I can get rid of all my ailments and pains and different things like that. And then I can proceed and go through to the next level. So it's about being proactive, even in your planning in life like that. So planning for things to happen because crisis is going to come. Like Coach said, this ain't really a crisis. However, certain things are always going to come up. They're going to be obstacles in a way that's going to stop us and that's going to set us back. Uh, Last question. Love life. Here we go. The four pillars of me. All right. Love life. You and your partner are going through a rough patch and it feels like you are constantly on edge. Work pressures are mounting and you find yourself shutting down emotionally. How can you lead your relationship through this crisis while maintaining your own mental health? We've talked about this so much already, huh?
Yeah. So a lot of unknowns in this one again.
Mm-hmm.
I need to understand what rough patch means, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Subjective again.
right. Rough patch could just simply mean that we're not talking. And we kind of talked about that previously.
Mhm.
Rough patch could simply means that I'm not in the mood. She's not in the mood. Rough patch could simply mean that the in-laws are intruding in our marriage, or whatever that looks like. It feels like you are constantly on edge. So again, defining what that constantly on edge looks like. I think the first thing that everybody needs to do is take their feelings and point it back to themselves. Whatever it is that I am feeling, look in the mirror and say, how am I contributing to this? Like, what is this feeling trying to tell me about me? It could be that I'm feel this way because I don't like this scenario. Okay, great. So if I don't like this whole scenario, and I'm not talking work yet, but if I don't like this whole scenario within our relationship, what did I do to contribute anything to this? Anything. And if I can identify 5% of the situation is on me, then I correct the 5%. And then I should also be open and transparent and say, look, I kind of identified that I've done something. And this is the thing. And I'm going to call it by name. This is the thing that I've done. And so I want you to understand that I recognize that things are not like they were. I recognize this thing and I am going to change the thing. I think the biggest mistake we make in relationships is number one, having we don't necessarily understand boundaries, so we don't have clear set boundaries, and because we don't have clear set boundaries, we don't necessarily enforce or reinforce boundaries. And because all of these things exist, what we end up doing is, like somebody said in the chat earlier, that we end up pointing the finger at one another. Well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that and you didn't do this and you didn't do that. Well, but what didn't I do? How did I contribute to that? Let me fix that first. If I can't see anything that I did, nothing that I did, if I can't see it, then I go to the other person and ask them the question, open and honestly. Okay. Hopefully that can start dialogue because I'm not going to point the finger at you. I'm going to request information about me from you. Since we live together, you know me better than anybody else. So I think that is a great way to start the conversation, get the conversation going back and forth, and then we can get to the point of getting a better understanding, moving closer to harmony within the home. Work stuff is work stuff. Work stuff stay at work. Don't bring work home. I don't care how busy you are at work. If I can't get it done between the hours of 8 and 5, it'll be there tomorrow. When I start bringing work home, what I'm now saying is that work is more important than my family life. Well, work pays the bills, sure. But at the end of the day, you can, again, like we talked about the other day, you can get another job, pay the bills, maybe another job that pays about the same amount, not about the same amount, and not so demanding as this one. So I think separating work and life is two things that's important to do, and then focusing my energy on the most important relationship that I have. It's not work; it's my spouse.
Yeah. It's a lot going on in this, a
Hmm.
lot of unknowns, like you said. You and your partner are going through a rough patch and it feels like you are constantly on edge. Well, if you feel like you're constantly on edge in the relationship, then there's probably some stones that haven't been overturned. There's probably some underlying things that's going on that you guys haven't effectively communicated about. When it comes to the work pressures are mounting and you find yourself shutting down, if you find yourself shutting down emotionally, then that's something that's going on with inside of you that you need to figure out what's going on and address it, and then fix it. Um, and how can you lead your relationship through crisis while maintaining your own health? Well, the first thing you have to do is maintain or get your mental health under control. Like we mentioned earlier, you can't lead if your mental health is all jacked up. If your foundation, like someone asked in the question, is jacked up, then it's going to be hard to lead. So it's very important that you get your own mental health under control in your relationship. Do certain things, have effective communication throughout your relationship. Make sure you spend time working on your own mental health so that you can help the rest of the people on the team and the other person in the relationship. Like I said, if your mental health is jacked up and you excuse me, and you have a partner and you guys are somewhat close, then they're going to be able to sense and see some of these things anyway. So it's no use just sitting on it. Have a conversation and talk about it instead of walking around on eggshells and walking around on edge all the time. So
Yeah, and if you were on TikTok with us, I think it was Sunday. I said this. When we
Mhm.
start looking at shutting down emotionally, like
Mhm.
any version of shutting down that's called you're getting to the point of stonewalling. Once stonewalling become a part of what you do, it is a predictor of a failed relationship. If you are married, somebody is getting ready to file paperwork shortly afterwards. That's what
Mm.
stonewalling does. Lastly, how can you lead your relationship through this crisis while maintaining your own mental health? By throwing yourself on the altar of the relationship.
There you go. Man, that's what I'm talking about. Hey man, with that being said, look, we're not going to do actionable advice tonight. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of wrap up this show. And then for those of y'all who have tuned in, we're going to hop over on TikTok in a few minutes. We're going to take about a 5 minute break or so, and then we're going to hop over on TikToks. And while we over there, what we're going to do is just we're going to have an Ask Coach session. So just come on there if you have any questions or anything like that that you want to ask us, either about our show, either about upcoming shows, either about questions that you may have wanted to ask, whether on this show or other episodes or anything like that. We encourage you to come on over and to be part of the conversation. Who knows what question we get asked that's going to lead to a more insightful conversation. So, again, we're not going to do actionable advice tonight. Coach, what is it that you may want to say before we slide on over to TikTok?
Number one, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, so thank you. And secondly, greatly appreciate everything that you guys were putting in the chats. I was trying to read them and respond as I possibly could, but you guys were just, I mean, spot on. Some of your statements and questions were just valuable. So we want to thank you. Reminder: Friday, the Hearts of Men podcast, 8 p.m. Nothing this Saturday, but next Saturday is the premiere of The Hearts of Women. That's going to be
Woo!
that's going to be 10:30 on Saturday morning. The Friday before is going to be a joint podcast with the Hearts of Men and the Hearts of Women. So again, come on out, hang out, participate, add insight, add value. Miss Lisa Keys on here. She is the point of contact. I am hands off as best I possibly can, uh, unless she comes to me and says she needs some help with anything. But other than that, it's an all women panel, just like we have on Friday nights. And again, it's just like we do. We don't focus on just men. We just focus on the conversation through a male perspective. So I want to make sure I say that. And I think that is important that we understand. We should never have, in my opinion, we should never have segregative things unless we're training. So I will never host a all male thing unless it's a training session for men. But if I have a panel of men, trust and believe it's going to be open to everybody, man, woman, and child. Bring your dogs and cats and all that great stuff. So with that being said, man, I greatly appreciate. I thoroughly enjoy these conversations. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
I said to you, bro, because you add so much value that it's just unspeakable.
Mm. Charlotte Jordan said, "Awesome. I think she's looking forward to the Hearts for Women podcast."
That's what I'm talking about, Miss Jordan.
Yeah. So yeah, she always tuned in. She always in the background and stuff like that. So with that being said, right now I have 8:22 p.m. So what you say, 8:30?
8:30 it is.
All right. Look, folks, I gotta get up at 3:30 in the morning and go run. I ain't gonna be on there all night long. I'm gonna be on there for about 30 minutes. I might give y'all 31. But I gotta get in the bed because I gotta get up in the morning. I get up pretty early. So with that being said, we just say all hearts and minds are clear.
If all
um,
hearts and minds are clear, there you go.
yeah, yeah. But gentlemen, ladies, everybody who's tuned in tonight, appreciate you for being here. Appreciate you taking out your time. Appreciate you letting us go a little bit longer tonight. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna be over on TikTok on Coach's channel in 7 minutes. So see you over there. And with that being said, we are out.